control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with host Mark. Today I'm covering an episode of the Twilight Zone. It's season 1, episode 21, and it's called Mirror Image. Quite an interesting one, this. It features only 4 actors. Vera Miles is the lead. Vera Miles, probably most famous to modern audiences, the sister of Marion Crane in Psycho. Marion Crane being the one who gets got in a shower. And then her sister comes looking for her with a detective as well. So that's Vera Miles is best known for that. She puts in a good turn here. She's a very recognisable actress, and she does a good turn. She's plays a young woman called Millicent Barnes. She's waiting for a bus at a rainy bus station, dark night. But she thinks everyone's very rude when she first goes in, because they kind of go, well, stop bothering me. It's kind of like that. So she's waiting for a bus. She looks anxious at the wall clock because the bus is late, and then she goes and asks the ticket seller when it's due, and she says, "Look, this is the 3rd time you've asked." And she says, "No, I've never asked before. I don't know what you're talking about." And then she does notice while she's talking, there's a bag on the floor. Just to the side of the desk that looks just like the one she's got, which is sort of, and she says, "That bag looks just like mine," and he's like, "Yeah, well, it is yours." And then when she turns around, the bag that was on the bench, by the bench she was sitting at, is no longer there, so it is it's a bit disconcerting. It's a bit weird, right? And then she goes into the restroom, washes her hands, and she gets talking to this cleaning lady who says, "Yeah, you're in here quite... it's nice to see you again." And she's like, "Okay, what do you mean?" And again, the cleaning lady says, "She was in there before." And Millicent sort of says, "This, I haven't been here." But as she's leaving the restroom, she looks in the mirror and she sees herself sitting on the bench outside, which is very disconcerting, but it freaks her out. But when she finally goes out, she's alone and she doesn't understand. She's obviously a little distraught and perturbed, and a man, sort of a friendly kind of guy, a chap named Paul Grinstead, played by Martin Milner, whose face I didn't recognise. Well done turn though. Who happens to be waiting for the same bus. He kind of can see she's disconcerted, and he kind of, in a very friendly way, encourages her to say, "What's the problem?" And she starts talking about, I've got this double. She starts wondering. First, Paul thinks it may be just someone who looks a bit like her, and she's just, seen that. But he wonders also if it's a joke. But then she sort of. They go to get on the bus, but as she's getting on, she kind of like this and runs away, and Paul doesn't go on the bus, he follows her. What she sees, and what we see as the audience, is herself sitting on the bus with a fairly malign looking grin, like a sort of evil grin. This puts her up. She does faint as well when she goes back into the bus station. Paul and the cleaning lady kind of are looking after her, and they're waiting for the bus the next morning. And she starts to speculate what this is. She says, I feel like it was like an evil version of myself. She worries about parallel worlds where somehow they can converge into ours by some accident or some set of events or some circumstance she doesn't know. And it could be when these happen, these fake versions of themselves sometimes enter our dimension or realm. So, and then she starts to even speculate maybe the doppelganger needs to get rid of me to take over my place. Now Paul says, this is a bit deep for me. And he says, I've got a friend who can maybe drive us. Let me go make a phone call. But what he actually does is phone the police and gets her taken away. I think he thinks she's got mental problems. I think that is probably his motivation. And once she gets taken, Paul then's just sitting there waiting for the bus. He drinks a little water and he notices his case is missing. And he sees another man running away from the depot with his case, and he chases him. And quite, it's okay, the special effects at the time, for the time, but essentially we see the face of the man he's chasing, and it's him. And then finally the man looks round and Paul sees himself in that man. And as he stops running because he's just totally perturbed. This man, again, looks evil. He's got this weird evil grin as he runs off. And Paul just calls out, "Where are you?" And then the episode ends. And to explain all this, or not explain it, it ends with like this closing narration where it says, maybe it's insanity, maybe it's just parallel planes, who knows, kind of thing. Whatever it is, it happens in the Twilight Zone. Interesting one, this. It apparently inspired Jordan Peele's Us, and I can see that. I also thought very strongly, Twin Peaks Season 3. I'll try not to get into spoilers for anyone who's not seen it, but there is a whole thing about doppelgangers taking over the lives of other people. They're called tulpas in that show. But essentially, it kind of made me... reminded me very strongly of some of the elements of Twin Peaks Season 3, which was pretty interesting, right? In addition, I feel like there's lots of other stories of this kind of, someone being taken over by someone else. And indeed, there's lots of sci-fi movies where evil or replacements are being put in. Sci-fi and kind of horror. And they can be like aliens, sort of infestations, such as Quatermass 2 or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Or they can be robots. There's quite a few ideas of robots replacing people in various... both high budget and low budget sci-fi movies. So it's an interesting one that this is kind of where it kicked off. Now, there is an explanation given by Rod Serling where he came up with the story, and I've got two slightly different accounts, and I assumed there were stories told or, explanations given by Rod Serling at different times in his life and his memory changed, or, it's various accounts. There's one account which is on the Wikipedia page, where in a film, in a short film pitching this Twilight Zone to a Dutch TV station, he says he got the idea for this episode at an encounter at an airport where he saw a man on the other side of the terminal wearing the same clothes, same build, same suitcase as himself, and he wondered what would happen if a man turned around and it was him. However, he did say the man turned out to be younger and more attractive, which may be self-deprecating humour, salesman kind of stuff. So that's one account. Another account, it is similar but not the same. This is from the Rod Serling, His Life, Work and Imagination by Nicholas Parisi. It says he got the idea for the story in an Ohio airport where he noticed a person walking past him carrying a bag very similar to my own, and he saw the person from the back, and the build, back of the head, looked identical to his own. And it says, I never did see who the lucky guy was. It provided a springboard for the idea where a woman keeps seeing a twin of herself, and then ultimately seeing herself, which It's one account, so that was at Ohio Airport. But there are other accounts where he kind of says something very similar, but he says it's a London airport. I wasn't here. I'm quoting from The Twilight Zone Companion by Mark Scott Zickery. He says here, to quote Serling, I was in an airport in London, sitting there very quietly with my top coat in hand and a briefcase at my front. I looked up across the room. There was a man who stood 6 feet, 5'6", my identical height, and wearing the identical top coat with a briefcase of identical cowhide. I kept staring and staring. With his funny ass cold full of it, turned around and it's me. What do I do? Well, in fact, he turned around and he was 10 years younger and far more attractive. But this did leave his imprint sufficiently to write a story about it. So, the nature of the stories are very, very similar. One's Ohio, and there's other books which also reference it, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, as the airport. And there's this one where it says it's London. And in some accounts, he sees the person, in some he doesn't, but just speculates. That was the inspiration for this story. So a weird little Uncanny Valley story from the Twilight Zone. Unhappy ending. Sometimes Twilight Zone can be a bit, twee. But this one's pretty on the nose. I quite enjoyed this. It aired on February 26, 1960, and it was basically the show went into a bit of a hiatus for 5 or 6 weeks. A sort of a break. Though season 1 hadn't finished, it did continue. But this aired on the, as I say, 26th of February, end of February. And then it began airing again early April. So it wasn't a long break, but it was a bit of a break in the schedule. So when people talk about breaks in seasons, which seems to be appears to be a more recent thing, 5-10 years old now, certain shows break halfway through. Walking Dead does it, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. used to do it, things like that. It's not a new thing. It did happen in older TV shows, so that's worth knowing, right? So yeah, decent episode. I quite enjoyed it, and Vera Miles did a good turn, and Martin Milner as Paul Grinstead did a good turn, and the other 2 characters were perfectly good in this too. So I enjoyed it, written by Rod Serling, so they're usually pretty good when it's directly from Rod Serling, so no surprises there of the quality. Okay, that's it from me, but before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to